Okay, yes. So, thank you everyone for joining in. It's a pleasure for me to welcome Ivan today. And he, as you all know, he's a guru of business agility. And before we get started, few introductions. First one is our visual thinker Agalia. She is behind the entire creatives and all the creative things that you see in social media today. And the second person is Gaurav Dupar. He is a digital ambassador and he has been instrumental in socializing this entire event and building an alliance for us with PMO Global Alliance. He's a digital director of PMO Global Alliance. Apart from that, he is a project management professional, PMI, associated with PMI, and RPA professional working with GenPact. And with this, we move on to the next section, which is our agenda. We will take 5 minutes to talk about our community, and then we will hand over the stage to Ivan, and then we will wrap it up. Very easy, right? And very simple agenda that we have today. Yes. So let me take you through our community update. Yes, here it is. As you all know, our community is known as a Women Power Up community. You see this woman over here, yes. And although we are said to be the fairer sex, but definitely when we come together, we can power up an entire community. And that's the mission that we have today with this community. We are looking forward how we can build up on each other's strengths and how we can power up. And this is the vision, mission, and values of our community. Yes, the vision is very ambitious. Is to empower not only women but anyone, any individual with the right support, with the right skills, which can change the future. And what is the mission that we are on today? To provide a platform to enhance leadership qualities, and that's what we do through webinars, through mentoring activities, through authoring opportunities, etc. And today's webinar is just an example of how we are bringing in experts to help us understand how we can thrive in this uncertain world. And our values, we definitely power each other up. And we also think that being good enough is just amazing. You don't need to be an expert to help one another. And together we rise. And yes, we are a strong community of 300 members, and mostly women across the globe. But we do welcome men also to join our community and support us. Last month, we did have an event known as Revive and Thrive. It was on 18th of July, and we called some inspiring women to talk about how to redefine relationships in this COVID era. And it was Pallavi Barwal. She's a TEDx speaker and an intimacy coach, and she's a founder of Red Womb. And she spoke about how you can redefine your relationship while we are still under lockdown. Then we had an award-winning author, Seema Giri. She talked to us about the missing secret to success, how self-help is the best help before you start helping others. And then we also had Lakshana Chadda. She is the founder and CEO of India's largest carpooling platform, that is SRI. And she talked about data matrix in business. And we did get some good feedback, which we are showing off here, and mostly 8 to 10. And we do always take an interactive feedback because we know everyone gets lost in and busy in their work and they never have time to take the feedback. And this is how our community is looking. We have 171 members on Facebook and 228 members on LinkedIn. So some are common, probably that's why we say 300 odd members that we have today. 350 strong member community. Yes, up. Yeah, some exciting things are happening. We have Jeanette Kramer, who is coming and speaking to us next month, September 16, 2020. She's a advanced disc consultant, and she's going to talk about how to identify your own personality, how to identify others' personality, and improve your interpersonal skills. And we are looking forward to that webinar as well. We have joined hands with PMO Global Alliance, thanks to Gaurav, and we are going to shape, and one day in the conference that's coming up soon, that one day will be shaped up by the Women Power Up community, and that would be October 9, 2020. And this is a free conference, so please do register and do come on October 9, 2020. And this will be more on innovation, and of course, women, our people will be shaping up the agenda of this community, of this conference on October 9th. And with this, thank you. That is all about our community updates. And with this, I will move on to the next section, which is the webinar. And if you do have any questions, you are free to type in on the chat window, and we will take it from there. Yes. So, Ivan. Ivan is the founder and the CEO of Business Agility Institute. And I met Ivan in 2017 in PMI Global Conference, Chicago. And I was amazed by the thought leadership that he brings to the table. And can you imagine? I was on the same panel with Ivan, and really that was a proud or a moment of pride for me as well. And today I'm so happy to welcome him on this session, the community that we have founded. And Ivan, as you all know, is working towards supporting the next generation of organizations that are agile, innovative, dynamic. And he's not doing it now. He's been doing it since 2017 or even before that. 2017 is when I came to know him. But it's to perfectly design and thrive in today's unpredictable market. That's what he was working. He is still working on. And as well as leading the Business Agility Institute. Ivan is also the author of No Projects, #No Projects, yes, a culture of continuous value and directing the agile organization. Yeah, project managers, don't get scared. We will still be there. He's talking about continuous improvement. He's not talking about get rid of projects. Yes, there will be no projects because those will not end. It will go on. It will go on. Okay, I will need to mute someone now again. All right, so that is pretty much about it. So Ivan, with this, I hand over the stage to you and to talk about the certain uncertainty.
All right. Well, thank you, Priya. That was an amazing introduction, and I do remember that panel quite well, and it was a delight for me to be sharing that with you. And yes, interestingly, that conference was probably only about a month after we launched the Business Agility Institute. Now, my background, I've been doing business agility since 2008, though back then I was calling it, I think it was Agile Business Management. But this kind of journey of looking at what it takes for an organization to be better, more customer-centric, more human, more humane, more adaptable, resilient when the markets change, either predictably or unpredictably, like we are currently in COVID-19. So a lot of what we talk about is not new, right? But the demands of the modern economy makes it much, much more important. So before I sort of start talking and sort of go deep into things, I've got questions for basically everyone. I just want to understand where we're at. So given that most of you aren't sharing your video, I won't do fist of 5, but let's just do sort of fist of 5 in the chat. All right? From 1 to 5, where 1 is, I've kind of heard of it, I don't really know what it's about, and 5 is, I know everything that you're about to say, I'm just here for fun. Tell me, what is your understanding or experience with business agility? So 1 is not at all, and 5 is I'm an expert. In the chat, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 2. Fantastic. All right. So, all right, excellent. No 4s and 5s. Fours and fives would change everything I'm going to talk about. So ones, twos, and threes means I will provide sort of a fairly high level overview of what it means to create an agile organization, and what is necessary from you and what is necessary from your organizations to make this happen. Another quick question. This time, instead of the chat, use the Zoom reactions, thumbs up and so forth. Give me a thumbs up if you have heard of or seen, no, let me rephrase that. Give me a thumbs up if you are familiar with, right, the domains of business agility, that round circular model. I know Priya is, because we've spoken about it a number of times. So who else is familiar with this? Gaurav, yes? And 3. Akhilesh, fantastic, okay. So in some ways, I'm going to be drawing upon the 3 of you during this conversation. So given that 90% of you have not heard of it, we will go through it, and I'll go through it in some depth. But I want this to be fun and interactive. I am not the speaker on a pedestal that you will listen to with rapt attention and absorb everything that I say, but rather I am down sitting beside you, and let's have a conversation. Right? I will share insights and experiences, but I want to hear your insights and experiences as well. I don't particularly want to talk for an hour all by myself. That gets very boring, and I don't really like the sound of my own voice. So especially Priya, Gaurav, Akhilesh, please, given that you gave me that thumbs up, I especially want to hear from you. If there are insights, just talk. Feel free to interrupt. Feel free to go, hey, Evan, I've got a question. All right. I will set time aside at the end to answer questions, but I'd much rather answer them during the talk than at the end. That way, we all, the ideas or the challenges or the confusion is fresh in your mind, and I can head it off straight away. The other thing that means is if you're thinking of a question, right, odds are somebody else has a similar question or a similar challenge with what I'm saying, and they're just not able to say it, right? Or don't want to say it, or embarrassed to say it. So please, if you're thinking of a question, ask, not just for your sake, but for everyone else's sake as well. If you can't unmute yourself, talk. If you can't unmute, if you're in a noisy environment, please just add it into the chat, however you wish. All right, everyone, give me a thumbs up, all right, using the reactions. Does that all make sense? I'll be good to go. Okay, most of you, fantastic. The rest of you are doing something else. I'm just going to share my screen in a second. Where's the share screen? There we go. Making sure I share the right one. No, not that one. I have too many screens. The advantage of working from home. All right. Can everyone see the certain uncertainty PowerPoint? Yes? Fantastic. So this is the domains of business agility. But you know what? I'm not going to share that yet. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let's actually just talk about why, right? What is business agility and why do we care? So first of all, right, business agility has no definition. It is a high level, almost meta concept. It encapsulates the entire complex adaptive system that is a company. It is not agile. It is not agile outside IT, right? Though those are elements of it. It is a very broad perspective that looks at how do you create an organization. Now, we often say that business agility, right, enables or creates, right? customer-centric organizations, or perhaps customer-obsessed organizations, right? Which leads to higher employee engagement, empowered employees, right? People who are filled with a sense of purpose, a sense of loyalty is possibly the wrong word, but certainly a sense of pride in the organization that they work for, right? And that in turn leads to greater shareholder value, right? More money, right? But let's be clear, that is the order in which it goes into: customer, employees, then let's make more money. Organizations are not, or should not, be adopting business agility because they want to make more money, right? That is a consequence of business agility. And we'll talk a little bit about why and what that means as we go a little further along. The other thing to note about business agility is it's about creating more human or more humane organizations. I want you all to think about how much time you spend working, right? And I know for me, right, back when I was an employee, I would easily spend 10 hours, if not maybe 11, 12 hours a day working. Now, I wasn't at work for 10 or 12 hours a day, but that little black box in your pockets, right, that keeps you connected with your friends and your family, also keeps you connected with your work, right? And I would wake up in the morning, right, and I brush my teeth, and while I'm brushing my teeth, the phone is in my hand. I'm just sort of checking my email, my work email before the day begins. Is there anything that I just need to get out of the way, get things planning? I'd be in the shower thinking about work, thinking about problems and challenges that I'm having, right? I would be commuting on the train or the bus, and I'd be thinking about work, or at least I'm on my way to work. Right? So work is by far the largest part of our life. We spend more time working, traveling to work, thinking about work, than we do with our families. Right? Now, that's not a value judgment. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just is. Right? But because that is the case, shouldn't work also be one of the best parts of our life? And I love my daughter. My daughter is the most important thing in my life. And yet I still spend more time working than I do with her. So if I'm going to trade that time that I could spend with my daughter, spending it doing something like creating something for work, then damn well what I'm working on had better be worth it. Right? Now, if it wasn't, you know what, I may as well just take my daughter out of school and homeschool her, spend that time with her and grow her. But I do need to earn money. I need to buy food and all that kind of stuff. Right? So the time I'm away from her better be worth it. So this is the subtext of business agility. It's not why we create an agile organization. It's not the stated reason, except for a few specific organizations, but it's the hidden reason. It's what's underneath that drives a lot of what we try and do. So our goal is to create organizations that people want to work in, right? Full stop. All right. Does that make sense? Comments, questions, thoughts, experiences? Who here works for an organization that they take true pride in, that they really feel like they are making a difference? Ashutosh?
Hi, Ivan. Yeah, hi. Nice to have you for all, and nice to hear your thoughts. Yes, I like the way the analogy you put in. Like we should work for a purpose. I mean, that's what I was getting at. That you should work for a purpose rather than going in for that 9 to 5 job. So a question maybe before I answer your question. That yes, I might be doing work with a passion. I might be doing work with a zeal. But as an employee, I may not see that how is it getting reflected in the organization, or how is it getting attached to that overall vision of the organization. I think that's where I think most of us struggle, if I were to put it in this way. or I mean, yes, I mean, we all of us work with diligently. We go to office, we work diligently, we try to bring value in the work what we are doing. But is the organization reciprocating that, or is it or is it also coming from the other side? I think that's where the connection. I would say not. It's not there, but it's probably not visible. I mean, it's more of a statement which I'm making rather than answering your question directly.
No, but so that's actually a very valid statement.
Mhm.
So let's actually explore that for a second, because that's actually a critical point, right?
Mhm.
If this is a one-way relationship, right, right, then
Mhm.
this is a problem, right? It's uh, if you are married, right, whether to a man or a woman who does not love you back, right, that relationship is not going to last very long, right? So it's this idea that um, we give everything to an organization is,
Mhm.
to be honest, quite old-fashioned. The
Mhm.
organization must share as well. And it's quite interesting.
Mhm.
So if you go back in time, like if you go back to like the 60s and the 70s, right, there was this concept of hire to retire, right, which
Mhm.
meant an
Right.
organization would recruit you, right, right, with the expectation that you'd be with them, right, until the end of your working life, right, and they were a family. You would have a pension, and when you did retire, you were still part of that family. Now,
Right.
a long time ago, like I would say somewhere around the 90s, that kind of attitude started to change. It started to be people are resources, and it's redundancy. Okay, we don't need this. Like we're just going to make these people redundant and so forth. And so the consequence, you look at like this is sort of just before mal- millennials start to enter the workforce. And so there's all these articles about like um, millennials jumping from job to job. They're only in a job for like 3 to 5 years and all that kind of stuff. Right? But
Mhm.
that's not because millennials are somehow like different from prior generations. It's because the organizations that they work for no longer, the entire working culture stopped giving them any sort of security. So there was no loyalty to an organization because the organization never showed any loyalty to them, and they never felt that loyalty. And they saw people who treated their organizations with loyalty, with 40 years of experience, being laid off and being made redundant. And they said that would
Mhm.
never happen to them. So organizations have to. I, now, sorry, that's the cat's out of the bag in terms of that, right? We can't go back to how we were in the 60s or the 70s. Hire to retire does not exist, right? And it will not come back, right? So it's not so much about recreating an organization of the past, which you will spend 40 years in, but it's about making sure that the organization that you work for, right, or as an organization, the organization that hires you, treats the 4 to 5 years that I've got you and treats you good, treats you really well, right? Maybe it's to the point where you believe in the purpose, where we are aligned on outcome. And you know what? When you move on, not if, it is always a when you find another opportunity, whether it's more money or a different idea, or you're just bored and want to try something new. And to be honest, that's probably the biggest reason I've moved from company to company. It's just I got bored, right? So whatever reason you move on, you're going to become that organization's biggest advocate. Right? Those organizations that I've worked for that have treated me well, I have sent clients to. I've become their client in many cases. Right? And it's those organizations that where it was just I was just a number, right? And I treated them as just a way of getting a salary. Right? You know what? I I left and nothing. I never
Mhm.
thought of them again. I never gave them any business, any work. I may have stayed in contact with people who were friends or I was closely connected with, but that was it. Never went any deeper than that. So it is two-way. It is So it is a relationship, right? And when people leave, right, that relationship should continue in a different context because they believe in your purpose, whether they work for you or not. So
I like this point. Yeah, sorry for interrupting, Evan. I like this point. Yeah, I mean, so what I understand here is it's not a close of a relationship. The relationship is changing. Today, I'm an employer to you, and as you rightly said, like I might move out of this organization, come back again, and yes, I mean it's not a close of a relationship. It's just that the relationship has evolved, and the value system which was there as an employer-employee, I think that will be the foundation block of this relationship as it moves into the next level. And
That's
as you
it.
rightly said, I mean, it has happened, I think, with most of us, like the organizations where it was just a transactional nature or just related to that numbers. Obviously, we also would not like to be associated with that organization. Yeah, right. I mean, even being a consultant, obviously, yes, I mean, money is one part of the story. But obviously, that if that foundation block itself is weak on that two-way relationship, as you said, I would definitely not like to be associated with them, even long after I have moved out of them. But where the foundation block is strong, as you said, right? Yes, probably you could come back as a consultant, or you could come back as a more like a small-term engagement and drive out. Yeah, I like that point, Evan. Thanks for clarifying.
All right. So,
Yeah.
sorry. Go
Yeah,
on.
definitely
Yes.
very interesting discussion going on. Another thing I want to put over here is that there needs to be co-creation of goals between the employees and the organization, which most of the times we lack. And that's the reason the change or the transformation which is happening or which is intended to be done, that does not succeed in its entirety. So that's one reason which I feel is missing.
So I'll expand on that a little bit. So there are levels of goals, right? So an organization is going to have their purpose and their vision. Sometimes it might be called a true north or a north star, right? Those goals, no, there is no co-creation there, right? That is the organization's purpose. And unless you're the CEO, right? Unless you are a founder of the organization, it is very unlikely you are involved in that co-creation. And so that's more a matter of alignment, right? I want to make sure that you are aligned to that North Star, that common purpose, that the goal of the organization. But yes, when it comes down to the work that we do, when it comes down to what you can do to help us move towards that North Star, to that common purpose, those goals, yes, that very much has to be co-created. And we'll actually talk about that in a few moments. Any other comments before I move on? All right. So let's talk domains. So I get asked all the time, what is business agility, right? And when I first sort of started the Institute, or even before that, I would say something like, business agility is the capacity for an organization to adapt to a dynamic marketplace or an unpredictable marketplace. And you know what? That statement isn't wrong, right? But it's also not enough. Right? There is nothing in that statement that talks about customers or employees, about human or like the humanity in that organization. It's implicit, because if you want to adapt to a marketplace, you need people who can adapt. You need to adapt to the customers. So there's a lot of things implicit in that statement, but it's not enough, right? So about 2.5 years ago, right, we started, in fact, our very first research project, which was to create a model of business agility, not a framework, right? Nothing to say how you do it, because there are 1,000 different ways in which you can do business agility. But in this case, this was a model of what and who and why. So to very quickly share my screen, these are the domains, 13 interlinked deeply interacted characteristics of an agile organization. I call this sometimes the don't forget model, because if you're going to be an agile organization, these are things that you need, right? And certainly you need to remember to focus on. And too often, organizations focus on, for example, capital A, agile, Scrum, Kanban, safe, whatever, right? And they spend years developing systems and tools and all sorts of different, they hire coaches, right? They bring everything together and they transform their software division and so forth, but they don't ever achieve business agility because they're only focusing on one division, one set of characteristics and not the rest. So to go through this, no, not that, there we go. We're going to start where all good organizations should start, the customer. All right? Now, this is very important. Right? And in fact, when we first did this piece of research, there was a huge discussion around who is at the center of the model. And there was a lot of conversation, should it be employees or should it be shareholders? And there's both are, there's arguments for those as well. The shareholders own the company, the employees do all the work, that they're the heart in terms of the heart of the machine, right? But when it comes to purpose, your reason for being in business, that is your customer. Right? And as much as we love employees, employees are not our reason for being a business. It is to serve our customer. There's a great quote by Frederick Laloux: "Profit is like the air. We do not live to breathe, but we do need to breathe in order to live." So as an organization, you have to make money. You have to make a profit. And in fact, revenue, right, profit is an indicator of success. It's an indicator that you are being customer centric because your customers want to give you money. If they don't want to give you money, right, if you're not customer centric, then they will find a company who is, and you'll be out of business very quickly. Right? So we put the customer at the center because they're why. Right? They are the why. Now, to pull back a second, Priya introduced me and the Business Agility Institute very briefly. I do want to say two things about the Institute. One is we are a global membership organization. We have members in about 60 countries now, just over. We have chapters. We have chapters now in 3 countries. We launched our latest chapter this morning, which was in Brazil, which was really exciting. We have meetups in 54 cities around the world. We have events all around the world. So we're a community organization. But the other thing that we are is a research and information content organization. We have a very, very robust, very large library with hundreds of case studies and references and guides and primary research that we do, that you are all welcome to access and learn. So behind every single one of these domains are multiple case studies and references of organizations who are doing this well. In an hour, I don't have time to go through all of them, right? But I would encourage you to check out the Institute library, look at some of these case studies, especially those areas where you think in your organization you are weakest in, right? Where you need more energy or more focus. So with customer, it's like organizations like DBS or Target. There are really good examples from even like Indian organizations, American organizations, European organizations. So it's all there. Anyway, I'm rambling. Customer, why? So let's move on. So in the inner, you have the customer. If that's why, the next circle is who. These are the people, the roles who need agility and who are in their own right agile or should be. The first one is workforce. your workforce is such an important element to agility, because they're the ones who do, they're the ones who create value for the customer. Right? Now, I want you to think about your HR policies. I want you to think about your travel policy or your recruitment policy or your performance management policies, right? How each of these practices operate inside your organization. And then ask yourself whether or not these practices and policies enable or constrain business agility, right? And a real example from my experience. I used to work for a very large consulting firm. And in that firm, there was we had a very detailed travel policy, but it basically boiled down to, you had to get high level authorization to travel. In some cases, the country manager, and if it was like Q4, then it was the country manager and the CFO, the country's CFO, and sometimes even went up to the regional CFO to get travel approval. Right? Now, this was, oh, and then you had to buy the cheapest flight that was available. Right? So no business class for Evan. Now, here's the thing. I never once got declined travel. Right? It sometimes took 2 months to get approval, but never once was I declined. So I was obviously trustworthy. Right? But here's what was ridiculous. It would take 2 months to get approval. And in that time, the price, the cheapest flight I could buy when I was finally allowed to fly, which was honestly sometimes the day before I needed to travel, and this happened on multiple occasions, was more expensive than the business class flight I could have bought when I knew I needed to fly in the first place. And remember, I never once got declined. Right? So this organization wasted tens of thousands of dollars every year because of their travel processes. Now, and that's just for one person. Right? Times that by 100,000 people, and that's quite a decent sum of money that they were wasting. Now, compare that with Netflix's travel policy. It's 5 words: act in Netflix's best interest. That's a pretty damn good HR policy. In fact, like, forget travel, that's a pretty damn good policy for any business function. Right? So there's a key aspect of business agility that I think a lot of people overlook. And it's going to sound a bit strange, but this is a topic that I really like this topic. And that topic is governance. Now, not many people can say that governance is a good topic and something that they enjoy, right? But it really is, because governance is vital for an organization. But the trick here is to create agile governance. And very simplistically, I talk about 2 kinds of governance: approval-based governance and audit-based governance. That is, approval-based governance is stop until I tell you to continue. It is a gate, a checkpoint, a milestone is where you need to get a signature from somebody. Anything where there is a roadblock in the value stream. Right? In my case for travel, it was I had to get approval for travel. Right? In many other cases, it could be your program control board or your project control board, the PCB, or whatever it's called in your organization. Right? I worked for another organization, a big mining firm, and they, to even get started on a project, there were 4, we got it down to 3 gates, right, just to get started on a project. Right? Now, compare that to audit-based governance. Continue until I tell you to stop. And that is a lot more agile than the other. So think about it in terms of, for me to travel. Right? Now, if I was allowed to buy the ticket when I knew I needed to travel, I would buy that ticket. It would be a lot cheaper. Right? Now, one of 3 things happens here. Right? One is, right, they check, everything's fine, and I go about my merry way. In fact, I don't even know they checked. Audit-based governance should be regular, and unobtrusive. I don't mean like an audit of give us evidence as to why you did this. I mean just checking, just very unobtrusively. 2, they checked and they found that I made a mistake. I booked the wrong flight. I booked a business class flight when I shouldn't. I booked a flight to something that I really shouldn't have. I didn't need to travel to that conference, or I didn't need to travel to that client. Now, you know what? What do? They call me into a room. They go, hey, Evan, want to have a chat about that booking? You shouldn't have done that. And here's why. That could have been a video conference. You're going for a 1-hour meeting. It's not a very important client. We're not going to make much money out of this. Or perhaps there's already someone in that city who could have done that meeting, not you. And what would I have done? I would never have made that mistake again. I would have learnt. And the cost to the organization from that mistake was negligible, especially compared to the wasted money that we spent time and time again. Third option, I bought first-class tickets for me and my family to go to Las Vegas. Fraud, effectively, breaking the employee contract, code of conduct, maybe even the law. You know what? I'm fired. They've lost 5 grand, 10 grand, but they've also discovered very early on that I'm untrustworthy, that I should not be working for that organization. And you know what? Losing 10 grand to learn that someone should not be working for an organization is a small price to pay. Here's the other thing, that approval-based governance would never have found that. If I want to be a bad actor, if I want to commit fraud, I know my way around the approval, and they would never have found, or at least they wouldn't have found it out for a year or 2. And that is a huge limitation on, well, everything that we do in terms of governance. So let me pause there for a second. Does that make sense? Are there any sort of questions or comments, anything like that?
Yeah, so actually I posted a question and Priya answered it. So it was
But
about,
Evan, I like
yeah.
Yeah, I like this two-phase model. Approval, audit governance over approval governance. And I think the right example what you gave. If my travel policy or if my travel approval itself is taking 20 days, and by the time the business class, economy class fares have rolled over the business class fares, obviously there's something drastically wrong with our organization. And maybe something I would like to maybe again put a kind of a question here. I don't know whether how do I put it, or I'm sure you will be covering it. We also faced challenges in one of our engagements where the business, it was not a business agility challenge, it was more of a e-governance challenge. Like our important hardware component, which was required for our testing, that was stuck with the customs for almost a month. And here we had a team which had actually given a kind of a commitment in a sprint planning meeting that we will deliver it. And then within a month, we realized that the item itself is stuck in customs and we really could not do anything. I'm sure business agility would apply here also, more on the governance, more on the e-governance side of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I face this all the time. So the approval hierarchy process, the project will be gone, but we will be, getting those, going through those approvals. I face this all the time. Yes.
Well, and it's honestly why I wrote the book called No Project. It's we should be funding and planning work on a continuous basis, not on a temporary basis.
Right.
If I'm building a bridge is temporary. That's a project, right? But if I'm building a piece of software, I can keep adding features to that software, and as long as I have a positive ROI on my work, I should keep adding features to that software.
Yes.
I can't add features to a bridge. When it's done, it's done. So this traditional project metaphor, this model, doesn't work so well. And this also goes to that governance approach. So I am aware of the time, and I spent a lot of time on some of these early points, right? And very deliberately so, because the customer and the workforce is so vitally important. I'm going to jump forward a few steps. Oops, sorry, I've gone backwards. There we go. So the other two actors, the other two who, is the board, right? The shareholders of an organization, and the partners, right? Your suppliers or your distributors, those people in other organizations who are part of that value stream, right? And what is vitally important to understand is that the you can't be agile as an organization just in a team, right? It has to come from the very top, the board of directors, right? And it has to extend outside your organization to any part, right, that is in the flow of value to your customer, right? Such as your partners, right? You can be as agile as you want, but if your distributors can't give you feedback from their customers in a timely fashion, right, you can't be agile. If your suppliers, right, are slower and less engaged than you are, you can't be agile. Or more accurately, your agility is limited, right? It is limited by them. So in fact, one of my recommendations sometimes to organizations is, you've got all these wonderful coaches. Actually, you might need to go do a little bit of coaching on your suppliers or your distributors so that they know, right, how to be agile as well, because you need that as much as they do. So moving on from the relationship domains, we're going to move to the outside. So if the middle is who, sorry, if the middle is why, then the middle ring is who, the outer ring is what. These are the characteristics that are needed to be agile. And we break them up into leadership, individuals, and operations. Under leadership, we are looking first at people management, the skill of delegation, the skill of empowerment, the skill of developing people to be the best possible version of themselves. We know that the number one reason that people leave companies is because of bad management, right? And that tells us just how important management is, not leadership, not some vague concept of this inspiring leader, but very practical, very raw management, right? And it is vital to good business agility, no matter the organization. And I'll be honest, a lot of organizations don't actually train their managers well, right? And in fact, they don't even recruit their managers well, right? And early in my career, this happened to me, in that I was a bad manager because I was a very good team leader and project manager. And so what do you do to good doers? You promote them to be managers, right? And a good doer is not the same as a good manager. It is a completely different skill set, right? So to be fair, I learned, right? It took a good manager above me to point out my limitations and say, Evan, stop being so arrogant. You're not as good as you think you are. Here's where you need to improve. And I did. But a lot of organizations don't do that. They just hire the wrong people. And once they're there, they're so hard to get rid of. The next domain is one team, a sense of unity or common purpose, and is the role of a leader, a role of a manager, to take those 1,000 employees that you have and align them all towards that common purpose. And I think it was you, Gaurav, who mentioned about goals, right? So this is the organizational goals. This is about alignment, and this is where it is vitally important. And you can be, it's very easy to have a common purpose if you're a charity, if you're a not-for-profit organization doing something socially good. But if you're a bank, right, or if you build houses, right, or you are like a retail shopkeeper, right? You're still doing something vitally important, right? You still are creating value for your customers. You have a purpose, right? And the art of one team is to get everyone aligned to that purpose, no matter the organization and no matter what you do. The last one is strategic agility. Now, strategic agility is quite obviously important in COVID-19 times, right? Because it's very obvious that those organizations that can change their strategy, that can adapt, are the ones that are being successful. Those organizations that have been unable, right, to strategically adapt, right, have either gone out of business or are going out of business. Right? So the challenge here is to instill a sense of importance for strategic agility when there isn't a global crisis happening. Right? And what's interesting is those organizations that have responded to COVID-19 the best are the ones who'd been practicing strategic agility before the pandemic hit, because they knew how to make strategic decisions regularly with insufficient information in an unpredictable or an uncertain marketplace. COVID-19 just amplified every single one of those factors, but they knew what to do or how to do it. Right? The companies that were still working on a 3-year or even a 1-year strategic plan, right? Their plans are gone, right? And they don't know how to react. And unless they've been able to develop some strategic agility very quickly, right, they are struggling. So I am aware of the time, so I won't pause for questions just yet, because we could spend the next 10 minutes just talking about this. Let me just get through the next 6, and I'll just very quickly run through these, and partly because these are fairly straightforward. The next one is growth mindset. Now, growth mindset is a buzzword now. Everyone is talking about it, so I don't really need to go into detail, but yes, safe to fail, psychological safety, these concepts are vital to business agility. The next one on ownership and accountability. This is a double-edged sword. Right? As an individual, I need to be able to take ownership. And think of this as the inverse of delegation. As a manager, I delegate. But as someone being delegated, I have to be able to take ownership of what is delegated to me. Right? And again, like delegation is a skill, taking ownership is a skill that needs to be trained and developed in people. So it is not implicit or intrinsic. Just because you delegate doesn't mean the people that you delegate to have the skill to take ownership. You have to teach them how, right? But the other side of that sword is once you take ownership, you are then held to account for what you own, right? And that is important, because ownership without accountability is, well, useless. And accountability without ownership is well, wrong. It's ineffective. You need both. The last one under individuals is craft excellence. Right? So it doesn't matter whether you're a software developer or an accountant, you need to be good at your job. I don't need you to be the best at your job, but I need you to be competent, good. I know a lot of organizations that have hired large number of very mediocre or poor developers, right? And because it's so expensive to train 1,000 developers to be better developers, they just hire a bunch of agile coaches and think that agile will make them better, right? But no amount of agility will help you if your teams aren't just good at their job, right? So basic craft excellence is a vital part for business agility. The last 3, structural agility. Now, structural agility is a very popular concept. Spotify, squads and tribes, all this kind of stuff gets spoken about a lot. But you know what? While it is important, it's not the first thing that you do. And it's important to understand what elements of the structure are important. And I'll give you 2 specific things. One is the flow of value. There should be as few handoffs between teams within the customer flow of value, right? And in the tech space, we've learned this like a long time ago. I remember when dev and test were different teams, right? We've kind of fixed that problem these days. Dev and test are now the one team, right? At least in most organizations, right? Because having two separate teams, right? Having a handoff means that there is a delay, an interface, and the customers get their stuff later, right? It's a weaker feedback loop, right? You bring them all together into a single cohesive unit, you have a much better outcome, right, for your customers. Now, the same is true in any business function, right? If from ideation to delivery, right, that should be one team, whether you are in marketing, right, or anywhere else, right? But that also means, for example, in that software team where you've got dev and test and analysts, right, you may also need a marketing specialist, right? Because what you produce needs to be able to be sold, right? So there's other skills that are part of that value stream that come into play. The second thing to be aware of in terms of structural agility is that you actually can't break down silos inside organizations. Or more accurately, silos will always form. In the back of our brain here is that monkey brain, right? That forms tribes, us versus them. My tribe is better than your tribe, whether that's in politics, whether that's in sports teams, right? It doesn't really matter. The key here is because silos and tribes are going to form, you need to allow them to form in a way that is constructive rather than destructive, right? Dev and test is destructive, right? Product A versus product B is not destructive, or at least not in most organizations. Last two, skip over that. Process agility, right? This is where most agile transformations start, right? The software development process, the budgeting process, the marketing process, right? You need agility in those processes. And it's easy. It's probably the easiest one of these domains to do, right? And it's where a lot of them start. Unfortunately, it's also where a lot also finish, right? And that's where these diminishing returns come in terms of business agility transformations, which is where enterprise agility, the last domain, comes into play. Enterprise agility is the intertwined network or the tangled mess of processes and policies and systems and tools that all work together to create the organization and the organizational operations. So think about software, for example, right? You don't just have software delivery, you've got security, you've got portfolio management, you've got architecture, you've got recruitment, you've got budgeting, you've got 100 different processes even before you start writing a line of code. And you need agility in that entire system if you're to have agility in the organization. And that's where enterprise agility comes into play. So I know I did jump ahead a little bit. There were some good conversations early on, but I wanted to make sure I did cover off the domains before we ran out of time. And being respectful of the time, that's business agility. That's what you need to adapt and thrive in an uncertain marketplace. So, final questions, right? And I'm happy to stay a bit longer, right? So it's 9 p.m. here, so 10 p.m. here. So I've got no other meetings after this, so I'm happy to keep chatting. So, questions?
Yeah. I think there's a question from Padma. Which one could be a better option in agile governance model? Very interesting to know. Padma, you want to elaborate on this question a little more?
Yeah, that was actually most of it got replied.
Answer.
Yeah. And just excuse me, guys, my video is not working today, so I can see all of you. Yeah, but very interesting topic going on. I also have one quick question on the one which you're showing us right now, the presentation. I really like the way the presentation is going on. I mean, the one which I see on the screen is absolutely amazing, because the customer is the guy, right? I mean, that's the person whom we have want to concentrate on. But keeping pandemic in view in the current situation, I would like to know your view on the strategic agility and the structural agility. How do you think these two go together?
So, to be honest, I wouldn't be doing much in structural agility in the middle of a pandemic. If only because there is a lot of concern about, say, your job and your job security. Now, structural agility shouldn't have an impact on job security. But unfortunately, a lot of organizations do two things at the same time. They do a business agility transformation at the same time they do a cost efficiency transformation, which usually involves redundancies. Right? So while the two have nothing to do with each other, right, a lot of people think that they do. So if you start talking about restructures in the middle of a pandemic, all you're going to do is scare your organization and the employees that people are going to start losing their jobs. Right? Now, that being said, like informal shifts, right, to better align to the customer without doing a formal restructure, yes, sure, absolutely, do that. But don't scare your staff. Right? Strategic agility is the key here. Right? The ability to adapt, the ability to run experiments in the marketplace, the ability to recognize you don't know the answers and you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So I often get asked, like, what do you think is going to happen in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? And my answer to that is, I don't know, and I don't need to know. I just need to know that I can adapt to whatever comes in 1, 2, or 5 years. And that's where strategic agility comes into play. Now, on that, I should note, each of these domains is necessary. You can't have one domain without the rest. Right? So while you can focus on strategic agility, again, like process agility, you will hit diminishing returns if you don't also have growth mindset and ownership and accountability and customer centricity. So you actually need all of it, right? But you can focus on different areas and amplify them, but just be aware of those diminishing returns if you focus on one area for too long.
Yeah. And I think there's a question from Rahul. Rahul, you want to unmute and yeah. You're there, Rahul? We can't hear you. Okay.
So Rahul's question in the chat is around agile orgs standing a better chance in the downturns. So I can say, yes, that is empirically true. We are a research organization, so we've actually looked into this. What we have seen is that post-COVID-19, not only has there been, there has been an increase in the number of organizations adopting business agility since COVID-19, which stands to reason. We also know that the average maturity of agile organizations has gone up post-COVID-19, and that is in large part because those organizations that have low business agility are going out of business. Right? So the numbers are going up because the audience demographics is shifting towards the agile organizations. Now, to be honest, no amount of agility is going to help an airline right now. Right? There's no experiment that AirAsia or Air India is going to be able to do that will help them. Right? That is, so agility is not a silver bullet. It's not going to save a company from bankruptcy if the market is dead. Right? But putting aside those exceptional cases, yes, business agility is empirically doing better in this environment. Mm-hmm. And Gaurav, to your question, there is no framework for business agility. There can never be a framework for business agility because, well, I can create a framework for a process because a process is repeatable. It is, if in Cynefin, it is simple or complicated. I can define it. I can copy it. I can take that process and the framework for that process from one organization to another. But a company is a complex adaptive system, and it is chaotic or complex at best, which means I can't document it. The patterns that I use in one organization will be fundamentally unique. And while I can learn from other organizations, while I can be inspired by other organizations, where I can get ideas from other organizations, I cannot do what they do verbatim, which is why there is no framework for business agility at a business level. SAFe is trying, but even that doesn't cover the entire business. They're covering primarily the business functions attached to technology.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions on the chat, at least. So team, if you have any other question, just unmute and ask.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So, yes.
Hi, this is Rahul. Yeah, sorry, I lost my connection in between.
Okay.
Ivan, the question, I think I did post my question, but I'm not sure if I lost my power. This was about agility, and theoretically it is said that agile teams and organizations are going to sustain downturns better. But is that really true? I mean, from historical or empirical perspectives, is that really true also?
And for that, you're going to have to watch the recording, because I actually answered that question.
You did? Okay, I'm going to do that. Yes, thank you.
That's fine. Okay, so I think with this we will I'll share my screen again. So thank you, Evan. A small token of appreciation from our community for your time today. And definitely this is a certain uncertainty, and when not everything is certain, anything is possible, and I look positively towards this uncertainty now that I know all the domains of business agility. Behind me I have this experience, and I think we together can make it happen. We can make anything possible. So thank you, Ivan, for your time. Please accept this token of appreciation from our community. I will send this through email as well. And everyone else, thank you for joining. Please share your feedback again on menti.com 1511357, and keep powering each other up. So we'll wait for a couple of moments, and if you can open your videos while you take the feedback, we'll take a snapshot of everyone who has attended this session as a memento. Okay.
And please, if you do have any further questions after this, just send me a LinkedIn request or get in contact with me otherwise. A small request: if you do send me a LinkedIn invitation, please add a note saying that you saw me here. I get a lot of LinkedIn requests every day, and I don't, unless I know where you're from, right, or why we're connecting, I won't generally just connect by default. So unless you want me going, who are you and why are you trying to be my friend? Just say, I saw you on the webinar. Right.
Yeah, you did that with me, Ivan. You asked me so many questions before accepting the request. So, but that's okay. That's fine. And so, guys, don't forget to drop a note when you send him a request. Yes, Ivan, go ahead while I take the screenshots. Yeah.
Hello.
I was also going to say, I'm going to put the link to the Business Agility Library in the chat as well. So if you want to know more about the domains, or you want to see additional case studies or references behind any of this, of companies who are doing it, please check it out.
Yeah, and please take the feedback. I'm just posting the link on the chat window in case you don't have it. Just a couple of more minutes. Yes, I did. All right. So I think with this, we come to the end of the webinar, and thank you, Ivan, for joining us late in night, but to truly appreciate your time today. And I'm sure we will definitely leverage this, words of wisdom that you have told us today. And with that, yes, thank you very much for joining. We will meet again next month, September 16th. Don't forget to watch this space for more. Thank you, Ivan. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Ivan. Thanks, Priya. Thanks, Gaurav. I know, Ivan, it's too late
Thank
for
you.
you, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Ivan.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Priya.